Good evening. Woo. Oh, I see everyone enjoyed the bar before sitting down, but thank you. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Laura Heilenday, a Trinity 2006 grad, a Fuqua 2012 grad, and I am the Associate Vice President and Chief Engagement Officer here at Duke. Well, there's a lot of alumni in the room and volunteers, but sincere greetings from all of the Duke alumni community and welcome back home. Excited to have all of you tonight. This particular event, I found out on my second day at work, which was May 29th of this year, and was super excited to have it happen when I was several months into the role so I could actually understand a little bit more about it. And the more that I learned, the more excited that I've gotten. This particular event is sponsored by the Duke Women's Impact Network, also referred to as WIN. I got to enjoy a fireside chat earlier with their leadership council, and it's just such an impressive group of women and so inspirational to me. So thank you for having me earlier, WIN, and thank you for having me and all of us here tonight. This event is also being presented through Duke's Forever Learning module, Contextualizing 100 Years. So we really start to think about and continue to celebrate our centennial. So it is being live streamed, in case any of you needed that warning in advance. But if you need to revisit it or you'd like to share it, then you will be able to do so. But it is my great pleasure to introduce someone very important to our university and who's been pivotal in these last 100 years, but particularly in the last 7. Under his leadership, Duke has continued to build on its global reputation for innovation and science and just world-changing efforts everywhere. It's President Vincent Price. He is our 10th president, and he is a Walter Hines Page Professor of Public Policy and Political Science in the Sanford School of Public Policy and the Trinity College of Arts and Sciences. He has his Bachelor's in Arts degree from Santa Clara University and his M.A. and Ph.D. from Sanford. I personally, as a volunteer and now as someone who works at Duke, have benefited tremendously from his leadership, as I know we all have, and I am so grateful that he is our president, leading us into the next 100 years. President Price, thank you for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you, Laura, and I'm very pleased to welcome all of you to this wonderful centennial program celebrating women leaders for our next century. And we have a wonderful panel lined up for you. I'd like to begin by recognizing members of our Annual Fund Advisory Board, the Women's Impact Leadership Council, and the Duke Alumni Board of Directors who have returned to campus to spend time with us this weekend. We're so grateful for your commitment to this university and the many ways you're helping to lead our community into our second century. In 1896, nearly 30 years before Trinity College would become Duke University, Washington Duke pledged $100,000 to Trinity College. He did so because Trinity was having difficulty raising the funds they were seeking to build their endowment, principally with the United Methodist Church. Washington Duke gave these funds to Trinity on the condition that women would be placed on an equal footing with men. Though the college had enrolled at that point in time women for 4 years, the gift led to the construction of our first on-campus housing for women, and it sent an important and very clear message that this institution valued the contributions and the education of women. From the Giles sisters and the women of the Duke family to the remarkable leaders here in this audience today and on this fabulous panel tonight, women have been instrumental in shaping this institution throughout our first 100 years. In 1923, Alice Mary Baldwin became the first woman to have a full faculty appointment at Duke. She also served, as many of you know, as Dean of Women, and that was the first of many firsts over the next 100 years, including Duke's first female president, Nan Cohen, our first female chair of our board of trustees, Lorraine Sperling, who just completed her term this past July, and our first female athletic director, Nina King. And today, I'm proud to say half of Duke's deans and 60% of my cabinet are women. I know talent when I see it. And as you'll learn from our panel tonight, they and other women are carrying on so much work, carrying forward so many of the critical elements of our vision for this university to become even greater in our second century. We have a truly wonderful program ahead of us this evening, and I'm very pleased now to turn this program over to Alexandra Zagbayou, the Hart Associate Professor of the Practice at the Sanford School of Public Policy, my home school. And she will introduce and moderate this evening's panel discussion. Thank you all for being here, and thank you so very much to our panelists.
Thank you, President Price, for that generous introduction, and also for the history of where we locate ourselves in this moment in Duke's history. One of the classes that I have the honor of teaching here at Duke is a class called Women as Leaders. And one of the ways that we explore this idea of women in leadership in my class is by thinking about how power, how practices, how people, and how policies interact and intersect to create the conditions that actually inform, shape women's leadership. And so as you journey with us today in this conversation, we want to invite you to think about how these elements, power, practices, people, and by that I mean individual, but also culture and policies, are shaping the environments in which our panelists are leading, but also our whole community and our society. And the reason why we use that frame in my class is because we often have this conversation in an individualistic frame. What is this individual woman doing? And what we want to do is expand the framework to think systematically about the conditions and the environment. And so with that, I'm going to invite my panelists to locate themselves in this conversation, where you work, what you do, how you come to this conversation, and then we will continue to build and set the stage.
Well, thanks for having me. Good to see everybody. As President Price alluded to, I am Nina King, Vice President and Director of Athletics and Adjunct Professor of Business Administration. I teach a class over in the Fuqua School of Business, of which I had Laura in class several years ago. And so I am starting my 17th year at Duke and my 4th year as athletic director. And the 4 years as AD is way more batshit crazy than the 16 years before. So buckle up, college sports are fun. Thanks for having me. All yours. Sorry.
That was supposed to be your whisper moment.
I'm sorry.
Very good. I'm Toddi Steelman. I'm the Vice President and Vice Provost for Climate and Sustainability. I'm also a faculty member in the Nicholas School of the Environment. I am just a little over a year and change in my current position. Prior to that, I was the Dean of the Nicholas School of the Environment for 5 years, so I'm on my 7th year here at Duke. I am a Duke mom. And I have brought this shirt tonight, and I have to tell this little story because my daughter is the student sports manager for the women's soccer team, and they are playing right now Notre Dame. It's a big game.
That's right.
And she's superstitious. And this is the shirt I wear at every game. And she said, "Mom, you're wearing that shirt tonight, aren't you?" So I am wearing the shirt tonight. You are all my witness. I have it on. Okay, thank you.
The #1 ranked women's soccer team in the country.
All right, how do I beat this? I just can't. So I'm Mara Becker. I am a professor of pediatrics. I'm in the School of Medicine. I'm the vice dean for faculty. I've been at Duke since 2019. My clinical life is as a pediatric rheumatologist, so very super subspecialized, and I've loved it. My career has encompassed everything from clinical care to translational research, primarily involving clinical pharmacology and variability in drug response for those little buggers that do need meds. And I've loved my time here at Duke. Joining the Department of Pediatrics has been outstanding, and then joining the Dean as Vice Dean for Faculty in 2022. Nothing more fun than that. Sorry, guys.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yakut Gazi. I serve as the Vice Provost for Learning Innovation and Digital Education. I think I have allergies, sorry. So there's a person here who pushes our understanding of how society works and how we function in the society. There's a person here who pushes what the human body is capable of. There's a climate champion who saves the climate. There's a person who saves lives. I'm like, why am I here? I think, one way to describe what I do is I try to amplify the impact of all these individuals and many of you in this room through methods that are not necessarily bringing everybody physically to a certain location. So there's a lot of innovation, digital, virtual involved in that. And I'm very passionate about access and affordability. And I also believe that more people on the face of the planet should be touched by institutions like us. So that's the work that I do. I'm also a mother, an immigrant, first-generation college graduate. There are a lot of layers to who I am, but I think we're going to delve into it later in the conversation. But I'm super honored to be sitting here, and thank you for giving us your time. Thank you.
I'm going to keep layering some context as we go deeper into this conversation. So President Price gave us a good overview of the history of women in leadership within the context of Duke. I want us to think, again, outside of the walls of our institution in the context of the climate and culture in which we are. So if you look at the national statistics, 29% of university presidents for Research One schools are women, 29%. Of the 10 presidents that have been part of Duke's history, one is a woman, Dr. Naner Cohen, and she, on her own page, talks about one of her experiences was being the only president that was called by her first name. When you come to Duke, people often say Nan. No one else is called Nan. I'm just laying on some context for our exploration. Of the athletic directors in the Power Four, 6 of those athletic directors are women. There are 70 institutions. 6 of those are women, including our very own, Nina Scott. So we want to remember that. In the School of Medicine world, 27% of deans of schools of medicine in the US are women. When we think about the past year, we recognize that last fall, 6 out of the 8 Ivy Leagues had women presidents. As of today, 3 Ivy Leagues have women as presidents. We are also sitting very much so in the place where people are actually voting. And we know that we have a presidential election with a Black woman on the ballot. We are also in North Carolina, and North Carolina is one of the only states in the South that does not have a total abortion ban since the Dobbs decision. This is the context in which women are leaders here and outside of these walls, are conceptualizing, are framing, and are expressing their leadership. And we want to make sure that when we have our conversations today, we are recognizing that context, that climate, and the policies that are shaping us. And so with that, let's get a little deeper. And with all that joy that I just said, I'm curious about, in our conversations when we prepped, we said it's simultaneously so important to have these conversations. And sometimes it can also feel like, well, we're here, so sometimes it's like, well, they made it, so everyone else can make it, and we don't really have to have this conversation, right? We recognize that there's a duality. But we do want to know you are here. You are thriving in your careers. You are leading. You are trailblazing. We are interested to know what might be the people that have shaped you or that enabled you to get here. Are there particular policies or practices that really are important to your story of success? And the other side of that is, what challenge are you and your peers still facing that you think we need to center in this conversation? We're going to start with Mara.
Okay, thanks for letting me kick off. Okay, honestly, I think I was lucky to be raised by parents who really taught me that I can do anything. It was always just an expectation that I would do anything. Now, they forgot to tell me I can't do everything or everything all at once. That was something I learned over time. And trial and error. My mom used to say, whatever you do, be the one who's leading. If you go into medicine, be the doctor. If you go into business, be the CEO. I remember her having those conversations with me. She was a very traditional mom. She did work. She went to college later in life when we were in high school. But my dad had always been like the working parent. But they really raised me to believe that I could do whatever I wanted to do. I have lucky enough, second time around, to have a wonderful partner in life who also, we've grown together, and he has been a partner. He has never expected me to be in the traditional role, even though we may have entered into our relationship as such. And over time, he learned to share the mental load. I had to teach him what mental load was. I was like, listen to this podcast, dear. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Those lists, when you tell me it must be so exhausting to be you, and I'm like, it is exhausting to me. By now, after 20 years, he shares that. And in fact, there are things that he does I don't even know are happening. That's the goal, right? To have that equal partnership. And I think that has been our surviving factor over the years. And it's been wonderful to have my kids see that as a role model, because I saw my dad doing all the dad stuff and my mom doing all the mom stuff. I was also lucky enough to have wonderful mentors. Most of them were men, interestingly enough. But again, they never, ever made me feel inadequate or unable. Some of the things that I remember telling them at times were that, for lack of a better word, I'm like, you have a partner or a wife at home. I got to get home and feed my kids. I've got to get home and put my kids to bed. And they were like, oh yeah, you do have that other part of your life. And I'm like, yeah. And I think that it was good and bad. It was good because it made me feel able to do whatever I wanted to do, but I certainly still felt different. And I still had to remind them that there was another part of my life that I wanted to equally dedicate my energies to. As far as, complications or challenges? Challenges. I think for me, it's the stereotype of what a typical leader in academic medicine looks like, especially here at a Research One university. I'm generally outgoing, bubbly, warm. People call me refreshing a lot. And I'm like, what does that mean? I'm not the typical, maybe stoic, stern, serious scientist. And that caused a lot of insecurity in my younger years. And it really wasn't until I entered my 5th decade that I started to say, screw it. I'm going to show up as myself. I'm going to be myself. And I'm going to show them that you don't have to be a boring badass. You can be an awesome, enjoyable, funny, warm, engaging badass. And it doesn't make me less intelligent or driven or ambitious or capable. It just is a different view of that.
Oh.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yakut, can we invite you into the conversation?
+1 to all of you, including the second husband part, right? And seriously, I mean, he's my partner, and I have shortcomings, and he just complements my shortcomings. But one thing that I want to say is about challenges. So while we might have achieved a certain status and respect in our work life, you go home and you're back to society. And let me give you an example. My mom lives with me most of the year, and she's amazing. We're very close. Amazing, amazing person. I owe so much to her. A couple of years ago, one night, I'm sitting at my laptop, and she goes, "You're so lazy. You come home and you sit on your laptop, like take the laptop, and that's all you do all night." And I was livid because I'm hardworking, I'm nothing else but hardworking. Everything you see around you is the product of my hard work. So how can you tell me that I'm lazy? But I realized that her currency is not anything that I do. And this is a woman who raised me, right? Her currency is, am I washing the dishes? Is my house tidy? Am I taking care of my house? Or, am I cooking? Which I'm not. So in her, everything that counts for her, I don't do any of that. So in our eyes, I'm lazy. So I think, we might have created a bubble around ourselves that tells us we're so good, but then the society outside, including our people who are very close to us, who cherish our successes and be very proud of us, and there's still something there, that the expectation that we're not fulfilling. And I find that as a challenge. I became very, I made peace with my house being untidy. I cook, I provide for my family. So like all these inner voices, I think.
Thank you for bringing the cultural realities in which we live into the conversation. Nina?
Plus one. So my mom also lives with me, also an immigrant and a single mom. It was just the two of us growing up. And so watching her work so hard to provide everything for me, including continuing to pay off my student loans from college for a long time. It took her a while to pay off that degree, plus law school. She also did that for me. And then, in terms of non-traditional roles, so my husband is a stay-at-home husband. Occasionally I have to tell him to do things, but he's pretty good. He texted me yesterday. I did the laundry, I voted, I got the car wash. I was like, okay, check. And we have two boys, 12 and 13. And so just being able to raise them, first of all, in this campus environment, and then an environment with 700 role models as student athletes is pretty darn impressive. My 13-year-old just recently online bought some T-shirts that some of our student athletes sell that they make money off of. So if anybody wants the website, let me know and I'll give it to you. But of women's basketball players, and proudly wore that shirt to school. And so my boys are growing up learning about what it means to be a champion for women, which is really, really important to me. For me, you had mentioned kind of, is it policies? Is it people? For me, it's the people. I mean, I'm in the relationship business, and I've gotten where I am because of mentors. And in particular, many of you probably know Kevin White, my predecessor, who I worked very closely with at our previous institution as well as here. And he taught me everything I know. And this is an old white man, and yes, I do say this to his face, but has provided opportunities for so many of us in this business. I was the 31st person to have worked for him to become an athletic director. And so that's a mentor right there, right? And at every institution that he has been at, 5 athletic director, he's hired the first Black head coach. He has really placed a priority on creating opportunities for women and people of color. So I worked closely with him for 13 years. He brought me to every meeting. He had me in on every decision. He would bring me even to social events. Even if he didn't have a +1, you're coming as my +1 so that I could be around you all and interacting with everyone. At meetings, it wasn't, okay, we were sitting at the table, you sit there. It was sit here at the table with me, call on me during meetings. My back in law school, but call on me during meetings so that I would have a voice and make sure that I was heard. So that's intentional mentorship right there. When he called to tell me, or we went out to lunch, I'll never forget, to tell me that he was retiring, I was like, great, I'm gonna go find another athletic director to work for. I absolutely love this. And he said, no, you're ready for the job. You know how to do the job. And so it took me a while. And this kind of goes to the biggest challenge that I think I still face and people in our business face is there are not enough women who are doing these jobs and people of color. And so when I really sat down and thought, if I have this opportunity, why wouldn't I do this so that I can be at the table and helping to create change and opportunities for, I like to say, people to come with me, because I don't think I'm ready to retire yet, although the craziness in college athletics might make me. For people to come with me now. You said it, it's 6 women athletic directors in the Power 5. That's horrific. We're 52 years past Title IX. The women's sports buzz is so electric right now, and welcome to the party if you're just joining. It's been really electric for a while, but so why is that the stat? When President Price invited me to do this job, I thought, you know what? I need to do this so that I can help create change. So for me, it is certainly about the people. And Vince, honestly, when he said the amount of his cabinet, the females in the cabinet, you all should be proud of your university from the top down. We're placing a premium on ensuring that we've got diverse voices at all tables.
Good. I can only say, my mom was absolutely formative I was born and raised in West Virginia. I'm a coal miner's daughter. Tiny little town. My mom believed I could do anything. And that made all the difference. We didn't have any sports for girls growing up. And I was always really tall. I was really good at basketball. And she was like, you're going to go out for the boys team. And I did. And I ended up being the starting center. And let me, and we won the county championship that week. Undefeated. But I was in 6th grade. And there were no options for me. That was in 6th grade. But she was like, you're going to go out and do that. And I was like, okay. And let me tell you, in a small rural community, that was hard because I took some boy's place on that team. And my dad wouldn't come to the games because he was just like, that's just not for me, because it's a very macho culture. But my mom came to every single game and, she was always, you can do that. And that made a huge impression on me. And then because I lived in a small rural area, another thing that really was really important to me is that I became a raft guide when I was 16. We have a lot of free-flowing rivers in basically the part of West Virginia where I live, and I could go and do that, which meant that I was taking, lots of people down big whitewater rivers when I was 16, and it put me in an immediate leadership position. I think about that now, and my mom and dad allowed me to do that, and but they had faith. They knew who I was, and I was a capable person. And so, I think it's having those kinds of experiences. They are formative to you, and they give you the confidence. There's a physicality to it that I think is also really important. And I think that's translated into other places in my life. And I would also say that the places where I have learned so much about how to be a leader, I have gone on the thing that I am known for. I'm a wildland fire expert in my research. And part of the model that we have in our research is that we go out and spend time on fires, and I would follow the incident commanders all around the fires. And that's how I learned leadership, is watching predominantly all of those men in action and how they would lead. I didn't have any other way to figure out how to lead. It was through my research that I figured that out. And those are lessons. I could write an entire book on the things that I learned from those men. And they were just absolutely fantastic. And I feel like I could manage in those environments because of where I grew up and how I grew up. And I take a lot of lessons that I learned from that. On the struggles piece, I would say, challenges piece, is that I also feel very fortunate that my husband has been a true partner, also, a stay-at-home helper, and really splitting, very equitable splitting of the things that we have done. But that's also created issues in our marriage because I am so out in front. We've been able to work through all of them, but I guess I just want to say that it's not always easy. You have to negotiate it because you're playing non-traditional roles, and society reflects back at you sometimes that you are very different in terms of what you're doing and how you're leading your life. And, I just put that out there because it's not all rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies.
I want to thank all of you first, as also a member of the audience, for just being so honest and generous about the experiences that you are having, that you are still navigating, and the reality of how the culture is impacting your experience, but also already demonstrating what are the things that we can all be doing in order to create better conditions for women, right? I think I've heard you all mention sponsorship, allyship. We talk a lot about gatekeepers, but we should be talking about gate openers who are saying, come and sit next to me, and all of us can do that. One of the things that my students often say in my class is, love your class. Also, sometimes I live very depressed because we talk a lot about the challenges. So I'm going to bring us back and talk about the reality that there's a book in 1991, Sally Helgenson writes a book called The Female Advantage. And it's a seminal book because it's the first time that someone is not asking, what do women need to do to navigate the realities of leadership, but rather, what are women contributing that might be different than what we have observed that is actually necessary for the spaces in which we live and in the spaces in which they occupy their leadership? So my question for you is, how do you define your own leadership? And some of you have already started to speak about the places that have trained you. So how do you define your leadership? If there are additional experiences that really shape how you think about it, what are those experiences? But since this is a panel about women in leadership, I'm also curious about your own personal practices for creating conditions for women to lead next to you, after you, around you, which is what we're also all here to learn from you. And I'm going to ask you, Yakut, to start us off.
Thank you. I'm going to open a parenthesis and say something very important. As an immigrant, I should have brought up in the previous question. The reason that I'm sitting here is because Texas A&M 20 years ago, hired me. In a lot of universities, staff are not given those opportunities to be on an H-1B visa, which is your work visa. So there was someone there who saw something in me to give me that opportunity. And that's an important policy that I have to highlight, and I didn't do that in the previous question. So coming to the how I define myself as a leader and how I create opportunities for others to flourish into leadership roles, I don't know, it's going to sound like a cliche, but I think being a whole person and authentic is a very important part of where I am in my leadership journey today. I was not like this. I worked in a lot of engineering and science environments, IT environments where it's male-dominated, male-dominant. So I'm constantly questioning, am I belonging here? Like, what am I doing? So how am I going to be authentic? I'm trying to be like them, right? I'm trying to fit in. But I came to a point, especially in the last 10 years, I think I'm a little more brave about it. And I think being an authentic leader is not just a function of the person, it's also a function of the environment. So it's the environment creating the opportunities for you to be authentic. And authenticity breeds more authenticity. Now, I'm also going to bring up that intersectionality here because I'm always conscious about like what layer of my identity that I can be authentic about. I'm an immigrant. I don't eat cats and dogs. I'm pescatarian.
You got the microphones going on that one.
Why do I get back on track? Seriously, where am I? I remember. A few weeks ago, actually, AED sponsored another conversation about whole person leadership. And some of those takeaways from that conversation was the importance of environment, but free society where you don't have to censor yourself, right? The importance of intersectionality, but also the feedback corrective loops, surrounding yourselves with people who are going to give you feedback. And I think, as we go up in our ladders, career ladders, feedback becomes really scarce and, we're hungry for it. But, like there was an instance where I was vulnerable in a meeting and then my chief of staff came to me and she's like, this was not the place to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to have those kinds of people around you and then benefit from that feedback corrective loop about your leadership. We also have, a lot of programs for learners, faculty. We're very conscious about who we give opportunities, who we give the stage to. Diversity of those top topics that we cover, the learners that we think of. I also ask, sometimes annoying questions about what we do in our programs. For example, I was just talking outside to somebody, so that's a repeat. I'm sorry. But we have some online programs here at Duke, and then almost every single one of them, except for a couple of exceptions, they all bring students to the Duke campus. I mean, why not, right? This is a great place, and that in-person engagement is important. Everybody leaves very happy. But what is the pedagogical purpose of bringing people to a physical environment when we know that we are leaving some people behind by that choice? Caretakers, which is still gendered, which means we're leaving women behind. What does it mean for somebody to travel from the West Coast to Duke, Durham, North Carolina, for a weekend immersive experience for a single mother or anybody who's caretaking, and also the global impact. So those are the things that I value a lot. 90% of my leadership team is women. So 60 is very impressive, but I have 90. I don't see President Price here. And it's intentional because it's also recruitment and retention. And I'm also going to say one last thing and then stop talking. A Duke alum, Paul Quinn, I don't know if you know him, he's the president of a university in Texas. In one of the conversations, he had said, you cannot lead the people that you don't love or you cannot love. So I see this as a labor of love, and I truly love the people I lead, and I hope that is helping me navigate this journey. So back to you.
Toddi, I'm going to take it to you.
So, Yakut started by saying, I don't know why I'm up here. I think it's completely obvious why you were up here. Every time you talk, I'm like, what did she just say? It's so obvious. So anyway, I'm just going to
She doesn't eat cats and dogs?
And she's got a great sense of humor on top of it all. Anyway, my own leadership, I don't think this would be a surprise. It's collaborative, it's inclusive. I do a lot of listening. I try to lead through empathy. I don't think there's anything surprising about that. I think a lot of women probably fall into those different areas, and there's scholarship certainly on that. So I think the challenge with that is because you were a woman leader and those are the traits that get you somewhere, that is your go-to skill set. And I often feel a little bit of envy for male leaders who lead in different ways, more highly directive ways, with louder voices sometimes. And I feel like there's a skill set there that is not available to me that I wish I could selectively draw on at times. But if I do, you immediately get the backlash from that. It's like, you're being bitchy, you're being loud, you're brash, you're, blah, 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 you're too much. And so I feel like I'm hemmed in at times into a certain kind of skill set that is just not available to me, and that frustrates me. But I also know if I want to be effective, that is going to be the role that I have to play. And so that's just a thing. And then personal practices, what do I try to do? I'm in the, climate and sustainability is our thing. Lots of women in that field, women very much overrepresented. And so I think the idea is trying to create the opportunities for women to continue to progress up through the chain where I can, let them be themselves where they can, so we can all be ourselves, try to model that. And part of modeling that is letting people know when I take vacation, making sure other people are taking vacation. How do I celebrate, the things that are going on in my life, and creating boundaries and reinforcing that those boundaries are important and that we all have to have those boundaries. The boundaries are sexy. Create the boundaries.
I love it. All of those things as well. For me, it is, again, it goes back to the people. And so my leadership style incorporates all of the people, also very collaborative, lean on a lot of people to help to provide information. I always tell my senior leadership team, I reserve the right to get smarter. I'm going to make this decision with all of the information that you all are giving me. But in case we have new information that comes along a little bit later, I might switch because I reserve the right to get smarter. But going back to the people, it's really important for me to get to know our people and then for them to know me, that I'm not just somebody that sits behind a desk all day. And most importantly, I would like to get to know our student athletes and our student athletes to get to know me. And so the way that I do that is I try to meet with all of our freshmen one-on-one. We have about 170 freshmen, and it takes me all year. But I invite them to the office, and sometimes they're 15-minute conversations if they're not chatty, but they can be long as well. I have a forum where I ask them all the same questions, and I kind of write down their answers, which is helpful because I had to go back to look at something that someone had told me from a couple years ago. But I ask them things like, what are you watching on TV? So I've watched a lot of bad TV from their recommendation.
I'm glad you have an excuse for the bad TV.
It is.
I just watch it.
I sat on the plane watching Outer Banks yesterday. Come on. Terrible. But I do watch Love is Blind on my own. So if anybody wants to talk about that later, we can. But it humanizes me to them. And, of course I know all your accolades and you're a McDonald's All-American and 5-star this and whatever. But like, tell me about your parents. What do they do? And what other sports did you play? And talk about school and your career ambitions and that kind of thing. I always ask them to, what's been your most memorable experience at Duke so far? And it's kind of fun because right now it's beating Carolina in football is what the answers are. But kind of as the year, right? Amazing. We have the victory bell.
This is the wrong time to disclose that I'm a Tar Heel, but it's okay.
Oh, okay. All right. We can talk later. We have the bell.
Slow down.
And then I also asked them if you could invite 3 people to dinner, anybody, famous, not dead, alive, who would you invite? And so those are really insightful conversations to get to know them. And then I always ask them if they have any questions. And a lot of time it's like, what does an athletic director do? But so to be able to tell them, what is my job? And if you see me at practice or you see me at a game, you know why, that kind of thing. So for me, my leadership style is to ensure that I'm intentional, I'm visible, and I'm engaged. And I'm not just visible just to say, okay, Nina was at our game, but that I really am invested in your experience as a student athlete, as a coach, for all of our staff. I will say though, going back to what you said, Yakut, I have imposter syndrome all the time. You guys, I didn't play a single sport ever. Never. I'm so unathletic, it's embarrassing. So a lot of times I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, what is my job? This is amazing that I have this job. And then I have to remember I'm running a business. Yes, it is a business. I'm not out there coaching. Coach Shire's not asking me about plays. Coach Lawson doesn't need me to run drills at practice. And so, I kind of remember, again, my skill set. I'm an accountant. I'm a lawyer. I've worked in this business for a long time. I know how to do this job. But often, I struggle with, and I was telling you before when we got started, I hate this. I hate public speaking. It was a huge reason why I did not want to do this job. I literally was trying to get sick today so that I didn't have to come. Like a hangnail would have been fine. Alexandra, I can't come. Or can I fall on the curb outside and break my ankle so I can go visit Duke Hospital and not come in? But here we are. I put my big girl pants on and we're here. And so, I wrestle with that. And so it's important for me to display confidence to our student athletes and our staff, but also vulnerability at the right times. So there's my leadership. But anyway,
Mary, will you close us out?
Oh, Lordy. Okay, well, I think people would probably call me authentic to a fault. But what I really strive to be is a meta leader. I don't know if anyone has heard about this from Lenny Marcus. And I learned about this many years ago, this concept, and it just struck a chord in me. The first component of meta leadership is deep knowledge and management of yourself. And that was something I needed kind of early in my career because I was very excitable. And I would just exude all of the anger, the fear, the sadness, the excitement, everything. And there's a concept of, your amygdala hijack, which we have all probably heard about, and your fight and flight responses. And they call that the basement. And it became a code word in my lab where they'd be like, Mara, come up to the penthouse. You're in the basement. And I was like, you're right, I am in the basement. All right. Okay. Keep it together. So that's one component. The second is real situational awareness and remaining curious. And I think as a society, we could do a lot more of that. And not jumping to our cognitive biases and just thinking about that and being very reflective of my instinct might be to judge a situation very quickly because I'm a doctor, so I have to be quick. But in fact, I have to slow down, ask questions, be curious, give people the benefit of the doubt, and recognize where my own cognitive biases play a role. And the third element is really being able to influence people above you, people below you, people on the same level, people beyond your sphere. And that is something that I've really tried to lean into as I've aged, realizing that authority doesn't mean squat if you don't have influence. And so how do I create relationship, connectivity with people so that they know me, so that they trust me, so that they listen to me and take my advice or take my input seriously? And that has been a big kind of component of my leadership style, I think, or at least I'm trying. And a few years ago, when I first came to Duke, I was in the Department of Pediatrics, and I wanted to bring in some content for leadership development for the division chiefs. And I'm just like, I'm going to just email that Lenny Marcus. It is COVID. I mean, why not? people are just, he emailed me back. And then we got on a call, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy who was just this larger than life human who was like, hey, Mara, how you doing? Yeah, you want to talk about meta leadership? I'm down with that. You know, how could you want to have me come and talk? I'd be happy to talk. And I thought, oh my God, talk about like that beautiful moment where somebody who looks so big in your eyes is just like a normal human, just incredible. And that really stuck to me. And I really want to be that person that people can relate to and can come and hang out and have a beer with. IPA, hazy IPA. Yes. Thank you, Keith, my husband, who killed that for my calorie intake. And I really do strive to be a meta leader. But what do I do? Something that I think is my superpower is being able to publicly and very directly promote and propel people with very, very specific compliments. I like people to know that I see them, that I see what they do. I like to say it publicly so other people hear it. I love when people do that to me because it makes me feel like it's not just a superficial, hey, you're doing a great job. No, it's a, wow, what you said really struck a chord with me. I think that's so, I know you don't eat cats and dogs. Thank God. But in fact, the layers that you navigate throughout your life really resonate with me. And I think we can do that. That's such a simple thing that we can do every day. And I do think makes a difference. People want to be seen. And I think those little moments where you say something that you remember something. I'm from a coal mining district too, Pennsylvania.
There you go.
You know, makes a difference. So those are little things that I try to do to promote and propel others up.
I appreciate you all thinking about what you are doing. And I want to bring the conversation to what others can do for you to create conditions for you to be more authentic, bolder. And I want to frame this in the context of, so one of the statistics that I told you is that last fall, there were 8 women who were leading the Ivy Leagues. Now there are 3. One of them, Sally Kornbooth, is one of the ones who testified is one of the ones who still has her job. And when you read news and you read scholars, one of the things that comes up is the way that her board reacted. So the language is that the board protected her, right? And that protection enabled her to keep her role of leadership. And so the question that I have for you all is, what is the protection that you all need? What are we protecting you from? Who is best positioned to do that protecting? Those are my light questions to start this conversation, and we'll go. I was warming them up to get to this place, right?
Don't ask me
So the question is, what is the protection that women leaders need? We know that leadership for everyone is risky. Are the risks different for you, and what are they? I think you've already started to put some in the air for us, but really inviting you to wade a little deeper in the water and really tell us. And then who's best positioned to do that protection? This is a question about what does allyship really look like in practice, right? This is a question about power and who has it and how does it move. So I want you all to come into that conversation. And Toddi, we'd love to start with you.
Okay. So I feel that it's a very double-edged proposition of needing to be protected. I have very conflicted feelings about the whole piece of it, right? Like I don't want to have a need to be protected. And if I need to be protected, it conveys some kind of weakness. And I don't like that. At the same time, I know I operate in a world that is not completely equal or doesn't have a completely level playing field. I don't like that either. But I also feel like I've been given enormous opportunities. And, you know, the fact that I get to lead this university effort on climate and sustainability, and we've got, you know, a president who's out in front saying we are going to do this as a university. And by the way, I would like you to lead it for us. I mean, I can't think of a better job, a more empowering position to be in at the pinnacle of my career. Like, I really cannot imagine. So I'm very conflicted about that question. And I actually don't know where to put it. And that's my answer.
Thank you for being honest.
That's a good one.
Great.
Right there. I mean, building on that, it is. It goes back to what I said about the leadership from the top at this university, and what Vince and our colleagues at Duke have been able to do in creating a safe space for us to be able to do our jobs, and to bring it to what I do specifically. I mean, unfortunately, fortunately, a lot of what I do is very public. And I have a boss and a board who is very supportive. I'd like to say in my time, I have hired 2 football coaches, and the board, thank you, never asked me who my candidates were. I have colleagues around the country, including at a university in Texas where a coach we know is coaching, that the board is making the call. It wasn't the athletic director's decision. And I cannot imagine operating in that type of environment. And so, and so then in an environment where I'm held accountable for wins and losses, even though I told y'all I don't play sports, I mean, for so much more, but also my job depends on a lot of that, right? And so if I don't have the freedom to hire who I want to hire, who I'm most comfortable with working with, then that's not gonna work. And so I feel like we're in a really good place here. You guys, today, shit hit the fan today, and I got out of the car and was walking in with Vince, and I said, Vince, I need a Vince pep talk, please. Like, I just went through some shit, and I showed him what was going on, and like, I can do that with him. And so he's created just this really great environment, and I hope it's for everybody across our university, but I think that's really important.
This is tough for me too, because my leader is one of the 27% women deans in the US. We've had 2 deans in the School of Medicine that have been women, which I think is pretty astounding, being that just a quarter of them across the US are. And she's a badass. Actually, the only reason I'm here is because she didn't come, she let me come. I'm really excited about it. So really, you should have Mary Klopman here, not Mara Becker, but that's cool. But she trusted me to represent, and I was like, sweet God, I hope she doesn't get any backlash from me here. But I do think in some ways we operate, though, because of her advocacy for women, and she has a heavy women panel in her dean's cabinet, we sometimes forget how hard it is for women to advance, certainly in medicine. The rates of women professors, chairs, deans are still abysmal, even though more than 50% of the medical school classes are women. So they fall off at about the assistant professor phase. We have a lot of work to do. And so even though she has been a tremendous sponsor to me and to other women, I think we live in a little bit in a bubble to think, well, it's all okay, when in fact it's really not. We still have a huge amount of work to do to figure out why that pipeline starts to leak out around the assistant professor level and why women are not advancing. I used to say it's because they're just not up for the shenanigans of academic medicine, but it's not that. It's not that simple. And I do think that we need to have really intentional and focused programming and intentionality around women's career paths to ensure that they have the same support going through those critical periods of your career path in academics. That assistant to associate professor step is a biggie, that they don't get stuck at the assistant professor level. So I also feel lucky that I have a leader who has a staunch advocate for women, has always been, has been a tremendous sponsor to me. And I will also give a shout out to my chairman, Ann Reed, who when I first got here and I didn't know anybody, she marches me, this woman's 5 feet tall, marches me over to Dean Klopman. She's like, hey, Mary, and she introduces her to me, and she put me on some incredible search panel for the Duke Clinical Research Institute, and I didn't even know where the bathrooms were. And it's that kind of sponsorship up front, early on, that just gave me legitimacy in a place that no one knew me. And it was really important, and I remember that fondly, and both of those women have been incredible sponsors to me, and I continue to hope to pay it forward to others as I have the opportunity to do so. But it's got to be intentional.
So hearing what Toddi was saying about, I don't need protection. The feminist in me feels the same way. So I wonder if there's a proactive aspect of this protection that is about equality and not necessarily protection. And here's what I mean. One way to be brave is, several of us here are primary breadwinners, right? So like a lot is at stake if something happens to my job. But I was advised by another female leader to negotiate a step-down plan. I would not have thought about it. So are there things that we can do to protect folks and give them more courage to do their work? A change agent, there's a lot of risk involved in the work that I do, right? So, but then it's individual, like I'm asking for it. Can the organization offer this up to men and women equally, right? Then it's not a I'm weak, they're protecting me. It's just a standard operating procedure to make sure that people feel protected and they do their job with courage. So.
Can you tell us what a step-down plan? I think I heard something like, I don't know what that is. Can you tell us what it is for those who don't?
Okay, I'm on a 5-year contract, right? What happens after 5 years? Or if my contract is canceled, what happens? Now, you commit a big sin, you're non-compliant, that's another thing. But, just winds of change cause you to lose your job. And you don't have to be a president to have to think about it, right? Again, a lot is at stake. We take care of our families. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. For me and everyone who didn't know what that is, we were here to learn, right? And now we can all, by next negotiation, we'll know how to step down. I want to first say thank you to you all. We're going to continue the conversation, but thank you for both challenging even my own questions, right? Is protection the right thing? Is it the right frame? Maybe it's not the right frame. But I am hearing there are some responsibilities institutionally to be thinking about how are we sponsoring, how are we mentoring, but also how are our policies, step-down plans, not things that you need to know about them, but maybe everyone should know about it, right? And that might create conditions so we don't have women leaking out of the leadership pipeline. So thank you for all of the incredible wisdom you've already shared with us, and we will bring more questions to the forefront.
For the record, I'm hoping that I'm going to be here for another 5 years.
Exactly.
All right, well, speaking of people who wonder why they're on the stage, no, I'm kidding. I know why I'm here, so it's fine. I never doubted it. So we've got some great questions that our volunteers in the audience have put forth, and then we sorry?
They did. Oh, I was checking the score. It's not over. No, the game started at 7. It must be halftime. Okay, all right, plenty of time. 45 minutes left.
Put the shirt on. Just put the shirt on.
We need.
Take a picture.
Let's go do it.
Okay, this will definitely win. And if we do, I'm never taking the shot.
Can you wear
Toddi, when you told that story, I was actually thinking you absolutely could have worn that to the panel as well.
Just saying.
But now you're wearing it now, and this is where the tide turns.
That's right. Yes.
And then everyone comes back and sits in the exact same seats for the next game. So glad we've established that. So we got a great list of questions from our volunteers, and we had time to pare it down to 2. So, but the first one is about mentoring and sponsorship. And many of you kind of already talked about this organically as part of your discussion. So I'll give you kind of a 2-part option with it. But if you haven't already said something about mentoring and sponsorship and how it helped you personally in your career, could you please say a little more, including if there's anything instructive maybe to members of the audience? And have you personally seen mentoring and sponsorship evolve over the years as you've risen in your careers and there's now maybe a whole 3 women doing what you do in the world and you've seen more female leadership? And I will start with Mara.
Oh, come on.
You were looking away from me. You were avoiding the eye contact. And that's how I knew to call on you.
But I got her to wear the shirt. Doesn't that count for something? I was the first voice to be like, put that on. There you go. Okay. So I'll tell you. Okay. So I talked a little bit about, I think, sponsorship and certainly have felt it here But one of the things that I really lean into has been peer mentorship. You know, I think that I remember being young in my career and being like, dude, well, the only mentors are, who said the old white guy comment, which I say with love because they were terrific to me, but my peer mentors were amazing. And really, it was where we were able to learn from one another, grow with one another, hold each other accountable, sometimes hold mirrors up to one another when we were stepping out of line or not stepping forward enough. And they have been tremendous supports to me throughout the years. And I think that what I'd like to grow as Vice Dean for faculty, and so my job is to take care of the people in the School of Medicine, is more peer mentorship network. I think we need more of that. That connectivity keeps us whole, keeps us accountable, and keeps us, I think, stronger as a collective. And as relationships sometimes can be competitive, sometimes can wane over time, can be distant with you liking all of your video visits rather than in-person meetings. I mean, I think it requires, you tech person, you IT person, I think that we need to promote and project and continue a stronger peer mentorship model. And I think that has helped me tremendously, especially when there aren't that many pediatric rheumatologists in the world, let alone those that do clinical pharmacology. Like, I was like an N of 3 for a period of time. So I leaned on those peers. Done. Pass it over.
The Duke soccer mom.
Soccer mom.
I think that, you know, the mentorship for me, I felt like I never really had a whole lot of mentors. I really had to find my own path. And like the first time I got a coach was in 2014. And I didn't even know a coach was a thing. So it was pathway. And once I got a coach, the coach helped me a lot. But that was me going out and finding a coach once I figured out a coach was a thing. And I felt like I never really had that. I don't know how things would be different because I think I was always good at figuring things out on my own. But I think my path in leadership could have been it could have been accelerated probably if I had those other models and didn't have to figure it all out for myself. And so once I made that first step with the coach was incredible, opened a lot of doors for me to understand, oh, this is how I can get smarter faster. And that was really helpful.
Toddi, quick follow-up. You mentioned that you thought you felt like you didn't have any mentors. Do you know if you had any sponsors?
I had folks that I had folks I felt like I could go to who would write me the letters of support. But, you know, the positions that I found, like I had to leave the United States and I moved to Canada to get my first leadership position. And that was because somebody else came headhunting for me. Mostly because I was like, I'm going to get myself out of my current job and I'm going to start applying for leadership positions. And I applied for leadership positions in the United States and I was not successful, but then the word got out that I was looking for a leadership position. And then it was only by going to Canada and being given an opportunity elsewhere that I was then able to come back to the United States and find a position here. And so, you know, I went to the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, Canada. You know, it's not a conventional path. You know, you wouldn't think you would go there to come back and be dean of the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University. It's just not a path, well-worn path.
Not traditionally linear at all.
So there you go. You never know where you're going to end up.
If I can add, I resonate with a lot of what you said, Toddi, and I think my leadership journey and opportunities are largely defined by me being very entrepreneurial with my career and not necessarily looking for opportunities every single time, but benefiting from those and, you know, working in 4 different countries. So sometimes, you know, just you have to leave. You have to have the courage to leave to be able to do the thing that you want to do. So, but I mean, like you said, is really true as well. I learned from all of you.
I asked for my first one. I went up to my chair and I was like, nobody's going to do this job better than me. I think you ought to just give me that division chief role. He was like, okay. I'm like, done. I mean, I probably needed a shot of tequila before I went, but I do think sometimes, especially when there's not many of you, when the pool is shallow, sometimes just telling them what you want might get you there.
Nina, you talked about your mentorship relationship with Kevin. Do you want to say any more about that? Or, you also talked about how he'd clearly done that for many of his direct reports. And was there anything from that you learned in particular that you've taken and very tactfully applied to?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned how to model mentorship then, right? I mean, so now that I'm in this role, I understand the power of a network of mentors. And honestly, I mean, I didn't have very many either. I would probably say 2 main mentors in my life. And but what I've also learned is to kind of have maybe a wider variety of people that I can talk to for certain things. Like Kevin, I go to for everything. But I don't know a lot about finances, and so I'll call somebody that's an expert in finances, or I don't know a lot about various things. And so to kind of have a collection of people that can help for a variety of things, I think is important. A trusted circle of folks to be able to count on.
Yakut, I know you spoke about your journey not necessarily being one that was mapped either, and you were very entrepreneurial about it. But do you have any examples or anything informative about how mentorship or sponsorship may have helped give you the idea to be entrepreneurial, or how it may have inspired others, even you serving as a mentor doing that?
I mean, I'm not denying that there are mentors and sponsors in my life. But I think especially in the academia, we have so many opportunities to learn from each other. Like I go to the Provost cabinet and sit across from Toddi, and I'm like, I want to be like her, right? So there are so many opportunities if we have the mindset of being open to learning opportunities and observations. I cannot pinpoint exactly, who helped me with that journey. But I have to say my parents supported me. Like, I'm their only girl. And I didn't see them for 6 years when I came here to study, right? So there's that sacrifice and support for being adventurous. If anybody, I would give the credit to them.
Well, I know for all the very many important things that all of you are leading, and as Nina mentioned, what she does, she doesn't have any personal experience in terms of being an athlete, but she is running a very successful business and brand. And we are solving climate change and doing so many other things at this university, so much good work, many of which and much of which is powered by philanthropy. If you could speak a little bit, especially because we have many volunteers in the audience who are engaged on many dimensions with Duke, philanthropically, as volunteers, attending events and experiencing Duke, and interacting with Duke via communications. Can you talk specifically about how philanthropy has impacted your work and how it can continue to do so? And I will pass it to Nina.
I actually have a story about that one, so I'll jump in. Really important to what we do, and obviously you all know that as Laura mentioned, you wouldn't be in this room if you didn't understand the power of philanthropy and what it does for this university and for our students. So inside info, not quite announced yet, but my position has just been endowed by wait, the best part, by 2 women. So I do think we're putting their husband's name on the whole formal thing, but throwing them a bone. But it really was driven by 2 very interested women in what we're doing. And really, I mean, their belief in me is just so humbling. But their passion and their engagement, and really, I think that is an incredible investment in my leadership. I'm going to be not humble here for a minute, but in my leadership and then in our department. And so really excited that announcement should be coming out here soon. But that's the power of philanthropy, right? And these are 2 women that, one, I've had a relationship for a very long time. and then another for several years in her capacity as a trustee. So it is really, really amazing. But and then we can do the same via scholarship support for our student athletes and providing access to education in so many different ways around this university. And I think athletics is just another one of those. I mean, that we have so many student athletes that wouldn't have the opportunity to go to college without being a student athlete. And so to be able to come and do that here at Duke, we have so many donors that are sponsoring our student athletes through scholarship, and that's really amazing. We didn't get to the NIL question, and I'm gonna leave it alone because that's like 4 more panels worth of conversation. But yes, it is true. We are going to start paying student athletes next year, and we're gonna count on philanthropy for that as well. If that's not your interest, fine. I have a few more buckets for you to help support us. But there's so many needs to make this the very best student athlete experience that we can. So philanthropy is extremely important.
All right. Toddi, we'll go down the line.
So, our work on climate and sustainability, first of all, let me just say thank you for all that you do. You help Duke in innumerable ways, and we are very fortunate to have such a passionate and active alumni base. So thank you for all you do. Absolutely. And when it comes to the work that we're doing on climate and sustainability, we are trying to create a climate fluent student body by 2028. Like, if every student from Duke graduates with a degree of climate fluency, imagine the impact we can have at scale, because our graduates and our alumni out in the world effecting change is a really powerful force. It's how an institution of higher education actually has impact at scale. Our research, the research that we do, we have all sorts of incredibly innovative research that's going on, from new materials to recreating how we do our energy systems to ecosystem technology and plant science. So incredible innovations that are happening. Our operational footprint. I came to this event from another event where we celebrated becoming carbon neutral, this year. Which is a huge, none of that happens with one. We do have institutional support to do those things, but without philanthropy, right? And our curricular, like if you think about what we're trying to achieve on climate fluency, the curricular options, the co-curricular options, Yakut and I are working together on this as well, in terms of we've got a great project together. So if you are interested in something that gets the two of us working together, we've got, an amazing project where we're creating Coursera courses for an entire alumni base. Our first one is just dropped. It's called Climate Science is for Everyone. And so if you want to just hop online and take that, it's free, and it's a really exciting proposition. We've got several more courses in the works. So there's many ways to get engaged to help advance our climate and sustainability goals.
Again, how do I top you guys? I mean, I don't know, medicine, science.
Done.
Mic drop. No, but seriously, we rely on philanthropy all the time. I actually appreciate you bringing up the endowed professorship. I think that's something that's very important in the School of Medicine. Many of the folks that do get that, and we're getting more and more women to have them, it's sustaining, right? Because the funding environment is quite difficult. And as you guys probably know, in a health system, the clinicians fund and supplement and support the academic mission, but it's never enough. And so philanthropy is a huge piece of keeping our research infrastructure. And we are the best at research in medicine. As y'all know, we're number 1, number 2, something way up there. And we're really proud of that. But that's a huge piece that keeps that engine going. And Dean Klotman's incredibly great at getting out there and explaining, like you just did, the incredible strategy of research. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I not come prepared? But truthfully, I think it's just a fact that when people go into medicine not realizing the complexities of the funds flow in medicine, and realize that as funding becomes more and more scarce, we have to be more creative about how we keep the science going and keep the discovery going. That's what's so special about Duke Med, is the discovery that we continue to improve and advance science that actually cures and improves human health. That's all I got.
That was a pretty good description.
Thanks. Try it.
Do we have time for me to say a few things?
Sure do.
So first of all, science medicine. I survived cancer last year, so I could not be more grateful to Duke and Duke Health. So 4 things very quickly. One, in terms of creating college pathways, we have pre-college programs, and access is hand-to-hand with affordability, right? You can't really talk about true access if you're not affordable. We have some TIP funds, talent identification program, that no longer exists. So we're able to use those funds, the philanthropy that happened back when, and it still has this long tail. We awarded $500,000 this past summer to students who wouldn't otherwise afford our pre-college programs. In my previous institution, merely as a result of a huge philanthropy, we were able to roll out 3 master's degrees, all of them, the entire degree, less than $10,000. Those programs have now 19,000 students in them. So that shows you how important, especially, things like you described, there's upfront cost. Somebody needs to underwrite that cost so we can still be affordable. Number 3, we just launched a research center that is going to identify and scale transformative educational opportunities. Let's face it, nobody is inspired. I mean, when you look back at your educational career, nobody really says, oh, I learned calculus really well, right? There is pivotal moments that define your life trajectory. What are those and how can we scale them? How can we make those affordable? That center's work is a huge opportunity for philanthropy. And nobody said AI yet, so I'm going to say it. The AI's influence in everything we do. I mean, this is a pivotal moment, revolutionary moment that requires all of us to think about what we teach, how we teach it. And one other thing, AI's, it's going to cause loss of jobs, and those loss of jobs are mainly going to be women jobs. So Brookings Institute just released a report, 19 million jobs in administrative and legal support work, primarily women. So all those jobs are either going to disappear or largely impacted. And here you go, another layer to our plight as women that, there is work to be done and somebody needs to underwrite that work. So I'll stop there.
Well, thank you to all you amazing women and our panelists. Let's give them all a round of applause. I was sitting in the front, so I couldn't see heads nodding when there was talking, but when I came up here, I could. And I did see a lot of heads nodding when stories were being told. And I think what's really powerful about that is that so many of us, when there were certain stories being told, were like, oh, that's like me, or I see myself, or I feel that way. And hopefully that was regardless of gender, because there's so many universal truths. And one really big one was that in many ways, people, including yourselves, affected you and your careers, your ability to be leaders. So, what I'd like us all to take away when we go back tonight, and then when we get ready for lots of board meetings this weekend, and hopefully a win against SMU, and also Victoria's women's soccer game tonight, and all the rest of those things, is think about the impact that you can have as a boss, as a peer, as a parent, if you are one, as a mentor, and what you can do to lift up women, to lift up people who've been historically underrepresented in whatever field you're in or whatever group you're in, and so that you can be the person someday that when someone very powerful is talking on stage, you can know that you had an impact in them and you helped them become the leader they are. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.